Tracy Aviary is one of the oldest freestanding aviaries in the nation. Since 1938, visitors have come to the aviary for inspiring, up-close experiences with birds. But we're much more than an aviary. With education and conservation at the heart of our mission, we are dedicated to conserving birds and their habitats in Utah and around the world. 2021 marks the 10-year anniversary of our breeding season survey, which began as a bird monitoring project at a single site, City Creek Canyon. Our first team consisted of 8 community science volunteers. Since then, our program has grown to include around a dozen sites throughout Salt Lake City, with hundreds of volunteers participating in the project. Since 2011, we've continued the breeding season surveys as part of our year-round bird monitoring program. Every spring, Tracy Aviary scientists and volunteers conduct scientific point count surveys at 12 to 15 sites around Salt Lake. These surveys help inform bird-friendly restoration, management, and land conservation.
Farr. I'm the Director of Conservation at Tracy Aviary. I love going out and actually doing the surveys with volunteers. I think that's really fun. But I think my favorite part is actually what we are able to do with the data afterwards. So, we go out and do these surveys, but then we can come back and crunch the numbers, and we work with our partners and provide this information and influence kind of what they're doing on the ground out at these sites. So we focus our bird monitoring surveys in mostly riparian areas and in many riparian areas that are in this urban environment. And these are really important remnant habitats for birds that used to historically move through this area, and now they really rely on these riparian areas to migrate through, to breed in, and also to be here year-round for some of them. And so we're able to come in there, learn about the bird community, and then work with partners so that they can make those habitats better, so they can do restoration projects, and ultimately, keep those habitats good for these birds that are using them. Over time, we've definitely grown, which is really exciting. So when it started out, which was before I was even here, it was just a handful of volunteers, like 8 volunteers who came out and learned how to do these surveys. We just had one study site, and since then we've grown. We have about a dozen study sites now. We have 60 volunteers this year that came out and learned how to do the surveys. So it's grown a lot, and that's really exciting. It's a great way to come learn. It's a great way to meet people that care about birds, and it's a great way to contribute to conservation.
Russell Norvell, Utah Division of Wildlife Resources. I'm the Avian Conservation Program Coordinator. I've known Tim for a long time, before even Tracy, back when he worked for another NGO. And we encountered a situation at City Creek Canyon that there was some interest by the fire management folks who wanted to do some fire control of the riparian area, and a lot of the birders who were active in the canyon were actively interested in not seeing the vegetation cut down. And these two groups kind of came together in a bit of a conflict in a public setting. And we worked with Tracy Aviary to kind of capture a lot of the interest and energy around that and help convert that into some more positive data collection, because really what everyone needed was better information to make good choices. And I think that's what a lot of our work and our interest started with, is how do we convert a lot of the real excitement around this place-based energy, to something that's positive and directed. I think when we started to expand out of the City Creek itself, we started recognizing that there was real value in not just the data that's collected, but as much of that is the value it provides to participants in their understanding of how conservation works, what kind of information goes into conservation decisions, and how they can participate in really active and meaningful ways. There's a joke in wildlife biology that you get into biology because you don't care for people, but it's all about people, actually. And that's really true for citizen science work too. It's been great to meet some of these really wonderful people who are involved in these projects. When some of our volunteers get lifers for birds that you know well, and it's seeing that little spark of joy and that first, like, oh, this is their first Western tanager, or olive-sided flycatcher, or something like that. That's just a great moment to be a part of. It's super fun. I think a lot of citizen science projects sometimes come off sounding like, here's a fun piece of data we need to collect, but it doesn't really connect to anything. This work often really does connect to real decisions that are on the ground. I want to let people know that what they're doing matters, I think, and it really counts. I think the evolution of how City Creek Canyon is managed has really become much more of a conversation rather than city or managers proposing something and having people react to it. This is much more of a interactive and I think nuanced question now. I just think that's certainly true of some of the properties down along the Jordan River now as well. And I hope to see that conversation deepen at Alta as well, for example, where some of the work's going on as well. That, getting the Forest Service to really appreciate, I think, and Alta too, the value of those data will really be beneficial down the line in terms of those decisions.
Hi, my name is Elaine. I'm a VSS volunteer. So it was nice to go on the field trainings with a bunch of other people that I got to know and kind of look at different birds together and walk around different habitats that I hadn't been to before. That was really great. There's a lot of training involved, and if you've got some background knowledge, that's good. But if you don't, they'll teach you as well. I just moved to this area last year. I guess it's coming up on a year now, and it was during COVID, so it was really hard to meet people and do things and get to know people. And outdoor walks is just the easiest thing to do without being scared for mine or anyone else's health. So that was a big motivator, getting to meet people that also knew about birds and were also huge bird nerds. So that's been really fulfilling. The coolest thing, this was at Utah Lake North Shore. I was out at my first point at 6 a.m. with, I was the observer and my friend Janet was the recorder, and it was at the minute 4 of the 6-minute survey, and I looked up and there was oh, there's this bird that I know, but I'll have to put it down as unknown bird for now. But I know it was something I hadn't seen before in Utah. And when I looked it up later on my birding app, then I saw it was a common nighthawk, which was actually a lifer for me. And it was really cool that it actually made it onto the survey sheet.
Oh, there's a raptor over there flying. My name is Jean LeBaire. I have been involved with the Tracy Aviary Conservation Group for about 5.5 years. I retired about 5.5 years ago, and after I retired, I, wanted to improve my birding skills, and that was one way to do it, was to be involved with the breeding bird surveys. And I had more time on my hands and I wanted to learn more about the birds. My favorite part of participating in the breeding bird surveys is the fact that, one, I get to learn. So I've been improving my bird watching skills by learning the bird songs more consistently, and so taking those weekly online tests and reviewing that material with Bryant, and learning a little bit more about the plumages of the birds. So that's been, one thing. But the other thing I really like is also being out in the field. And I take the role of the recorder, and I'm with an observer, and just being able to contribute to that data collection. If you're interested in improving your bird watching skills, this is just a fabulous way to do it. Because you're going out with people who know a lot about the birds and are willing to train you and teach you, and Bryant and Cooper are both really good in the field. In addition to doing the breeding bird surveys, I've also been involved in the SLAC surveys, which is the Salt Lake Avian Collision Surveys. And my partner Ray and I, we have taken on responsibility for the city-county building, the city library, and the city public safety building. And so we walk around those buildings and look for birds that have hit the windows. And so we always say that a bad day is when we actually find a bird who has hit. But I just feel like this is a very important data collection point, is discovering, how many birds are hitting what buildings, what kinds of windows, and really trying to get people to think about how their windows can be mitigated to actually prevent that kind of injury or death for the birds. Ray and I also fill the bird feeders, the wild bird feeders, for the Tracy Aviary, and then one day a week down here at the Jordan River Nature Center. So it gives us an opportunity to observe the birds at the feeders and strengthen that connection with the birds that you know, we spend a lot of time bird watching, so that's our thing.
Tracy Aviary's continued conservation efforts are made possible by our tireless volunteers and the generosity of donors like you.